Welcome to Beyond Overeating by Wholesome Lifestyle Project, the Overeating Podcast, where I'll be showing up weekly to share with you what I've learned during my binge eating recovery, helpful tools such as yoga, mindfulness, and energy medicine. My name is Stel, and my purpose is to inform and educate so that you can fast track your recovery in healing your relationship with food and finally trust yourself around the peanut butter jar. Join me as I share top tips, my struggles and triumphs to help inspire or just entertain. Remember, there's nothing wrong with you if you can't stop overeating. That's why I'm here to guide you along the way. And welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Overeating Podcast by Wholesome Lifestyle Project. My name is Stel Coombe-Heath, binge and emotional eating recovery specialist. And today we have a really special, amazing guest who will be sharing her experience on fad diets, over-exercising, and diet culture. Welcome, Jenelle Tremblett.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I know these topics are very prevalent in women in general, but especially women from the ages of 20 and 30. So I'm excited to chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think age, there's certain ages where we can actually become very impressionable and, fall into fad diets, especially like you mentioned in the teaser that, there's just so many diets popping up, like which one do you follow? And it can really create a whole confusion as well as disordered eating patterns later on in life. So I'm excited to delve into this topic. But let me first just introduce Jenelle. So Jenelle interviewed me on her podcast the other day, Ebb and Glow, and we just had a little giggle because I actually read it out as ebb and flow, and she explained that it's actually ebb and glow, but it comes from ebb and flow, and I thought that was quite funny.
It's true. People mix it up all the time.
And we just had such a beautiful conversation about my journey in my eating disorders, and also just talking about mistakes we make in the diet culture. So I'll put the link to that episode in the show notes for you guys to go check that out as well. But Jenelle is actually a real estate agent. She's based in Toronto, Canada, and after spending years in jobs she never really felt fulfilled in, Jenelle realized learning into her innate skills of connecting with others will give her a career fulfillment. A lover of freedom and simplicity, everything Jenelle does today is all linked back to her aspiration of reaching early financial independence and living by the ocean. Oh my gosh, that sounds so beautiful.
I'm coming to you, Stel, in Australia.
We're just gonna have to make this happen, like manifest this move.
Oh, I don't need to manifest. I got to book a ticket, and that's all. It's happening.
Well, yeah, like luckily, as bad as travel restrictions are right now in the COVID world, maybe that's like giving you that gap to save.
Well, it's funny. I was just doing a showing of an apartment right before this, and the current tenant was from Australia. He started talking, and I was like, "Are you from Ireland?" He's like, "No, Australia." And I'm like, "Yeah, true." And I said, "Why are you in Toronto? Isn't things open there? Go home." I was like, "I'm going to follow you."
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my goodness. So did you want to just share a little bit about your story, and how you got to be on podcasts, and yeah, just your general life?
Yeah, well, as you said, my I'd love to say that phrase 9 to 5, but let's be real. I work in real estate. It's 24/7. The only time I'm not working is when I'm actually sleeping. And then in between that and the beginning of the day and the end of the day, I'm working on the podcast. And the podcast is all about, like I interviewed you, interviewing people with their struggles in life, what they've overcome, just honestly the real shit of life. None of this everything else, but let's talk about the real things we go through. So that's what the podcast is all about. Nothing to do with real estate, but for me it's kind of nice having both of those two things. I feel like I'm two different personalities a lot of the time. Um, in terms of today's topic of today, I mean, I'm 28 years old. I spend a lot of my time scrolling through Instagram as well. And as we all know, our Instagrams are like the joke around Instagram and especially early social media was like no one cares about what you're eating. That's all we used to post on social media, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it brings people together in a great way, but it also can lead to a lot of disordered eating. So I
Mm,
know even to this day, like I've definitely and I want to preface this, like, I've never had a real struggle with disordered eating, but I've been around so much fad culture and just my friends that I'm around everyone has had some kind of fad diet or just like sucked into diet culture. As women, you never feel like you're good enough. And a lot of our worth is linked to our looks. And it's
mm,
really sad to say, but it's still in society today. Like, doesn't matter how smart we are or how financially fulfilled we are, if we don't have beautiful looks to go with it, society deems us unworthy sometimes.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
impossible not to fall into these diet traps sometimes, you know?
Absolutely. And I just thought back, like, I just turned 40 in April.
Mhm.
And back when I was in my 20s, we didn't have Instagram. We
Thank God.
literally, um, Facebook only came out when in like 2008, like in South
Mhm.
Africa. So we didn't have that additional um, social media feeds of inspiration and like ads popping up every 5 seconds in your
Mhm.
feed. Like we had to go and actually search for it on Google,
Mhm.
on really slow internet connections. We actually had magazines, so like even though we didn't have social media, we would see um, magazines would praise someone for their weight loss, and they'd be advertising, this brilliant new diet, follow this 10-day, you
Atkins
know
diet was the big one, right?
it just didn't matter, so
Mhm.
even from very little, I remember. And it's funny, they put magazines, and especially like those like family magazines who
Mhm.
praise weight loss on the cover, right at eye level for little girls to see. And so it doesn't, the subliminal messages we're getting is like just slightly different. And I think nowadays it's just so much more accentuated. You have to be so careful what's on your feed, and a lot of us
Mhm.
can get sucked into like, oh, what's that person doing, and then you just go down that rabbit hole. um, and I know that because I cleared up my Instagram feed.
Thank God. Well, I know even the people who we were talking about this the last time we spoke, the new thing now is intuitive eating. And again, that can lead down to a very destructive path because I watch these what I eat in a day vlogs from these like influencers and they're saying like, "Oh, I intuitively eat." But I'm looking at what they're eating and I'm like, "You're not eating very much." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "I swear to God, there has to be a burger in there somewhere." Like it's not it just seems a little too curated and perfect and it doesn't seem real life to me.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
most people who are watching who can't see through that, they think, "Oh, they're beautiful, they have a beautiful husband, they have beautiful kids, and they eat like this." They're linking those things together, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one thing we need to be clear here is intuitive eating is not a diet. It's actually completely the opposite. There is no
Mhm.
rules when it comes to intuitive eating. And this freaks the hell out of all my clients. It freaked the hell out of me. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't have to track my calories, and I don't have to eat only two carbs a day, or,
Mhm.
like it's not about tracking. It's not about being perfect. It's really about tuning in and listening to what your body needs. Like, you
Mhm.
know I'm at the moment, my body is craving chocolate because
Mm.
I'm about to go into that time of the month, and I had some chocolate
Your iron
yesterday.
and everything is low.
It was delicious. And
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that I'm going to fall into eating chocolate all the time, but we'll get into that a bit later. So
Mhm.
so let's talk about your podcast a little bit more. Like, how did you get into the Ebb and Glow podcast?
Oh, it was a dream of mine, probably since 2016. And I don't know if it was the nature of the pandemic or the nature of maybe having just some time on my hands and the nature of just saying, like, if I don't go for what I want today, when?
Mm,
And I think the pandemic really shook things up for a lot of people in that if you want anything in life, people aren't going to hand it to you. And also, if what you have in life can easily be taken away, if we saw that happen for a lot of people's financial lives.
mm,
So it was just I've always been very curious of interviewing other people and kind of what they go through in life. And I just started to build a platform around it. And the way I pick my guest is what am I interested in learning about this week,
yeah.
or this month. And I know when we talked, I think disordered eating and like eating disorders in general is a huge topic that is around all the time.
Beautiful. Yeah. So if anyone's listening, go and
Hmm.
follow her podcast. It is really just a great conversation, and it really is just a great way to just be open and honest. And that's what
Hmm.
I love, and like my tagline is the raw and honest truth about
Hmm.
eating. So beautiful. So while we're getting into the raw and honest truth, what is your experience with diet culture today?
I think the time I was the most prone and sucked into diet culture, when I really think back, it's during times of my life when I didn't feel like other pieces of my life were fulfilled. So I know in university was a rough place for me. Not rough in it was just when you leave high school, you feel very comfortable. You know your
Mm,
place, you know your friends, you know what you're good at, you know what you're bad at. And then when you go to a whole different city and for me a different province, knowing no one, it's everything you had before. It's a clean slate for everyone.
yeah.
And I know that definitely rocked my world and the courses I was taking was like nothing I've ever experienced or taken before. And it was all new, and the late nights of studying, the working to be able to pay rent, you start eating pretty bad. You're
Yeah.
drinking all the time.
Oh my goodness,
The
yes.
the idea of freshman 15 is a real thing. And for me, I think it was freshman 30, maybe
Hmm.
more. And in high school, I played a lot of sports. I was a lifeguard, so I was very active. I'm a very active person in general. And I think going into university, just studying all the time, sitting and eating and late night eating. The pounds went on pretty quick. And then you get in a bad cycle of, okay, how do I go back to what I was before? And then like anyone, you're looking for a quick fix, you're looking
Mm.
for what's the hardest workout that I can do for the best results? What's the littlest I can eat? I'm sure you know where that goes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that cycle, we actually um, gain fats, then we actually lose, we go on this restrictive diet, we lose muscle.
Mhm.
We see this weight loss, we're like, oh my goodness. And then, that can't last forever. So we back on to gaining fat. So that's how
I
the
know.
metabolism really gets. And along with the metabolism, I think there's a synchronous um, kind of attack on our self-esteem. Every time we fail at that diet or that eating
Mhm.
plan, it just kind of knocks us down and think, well, you can't even get your eating right. You can't even get your body in, well, this was really my self-talk, but like, you can't get your body right. So like, what are you as a person?
Mhm. I know for me it was again back to university, you're looking for validation from everyone
Mm,
else, especially the opposite sex. If
yes.
you're just in a very vulnerable age, that 18 to 22 age, like,
Mm.
oh, it's so bad. And then like I said, the partying on top of it, the waking up with no sleep, and then you have to go and do an exam that for a course that you don't really care about. Of course you're just gonna keep drinking and eating and oh, it's really bad.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is like, in a way, it's because, like you said, you're in this new environment.
Mhm.
Stress food is freely available and cheap. But also, we tend to comfort eat when we do eat.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually the cheapest things we can find. But a lot of that is because our whole environment has been uprooted. And this is the first time as a young adult where you actually become
You're on your
independent,
own.
you're on your own.
Yeah.
And that is really like, that threatens our whole survival. And it
Mm-hmm.
just makes so much sense that um, we go and, like just either find comfort in food and either not. When I was at uni, I actually feared, because I heard about the
You were the opposite. You were
yeah,
fearing. You already knew what you were getting into.
I was knew what I was getting into, but you see, already had restrictive eating behaviors from the age of
Mm.
16. So I just continued with that. I increased my drinking, I increased my cigarette smoking, because like every time I'd have a meal, I'd smoke, and mostly just because apparently it sped up your metabolism.
Mm.
Disclaimer, please don't smoke. Don't
This is
drink,
not
speed up
true.
your metabolism. So yeah, it was just crazy how I actually ate less and less and less. And most of my relationships were like, still like the boyfriends I did have, they're like, you got to eat, girl. And I was like, I'm not interested. So
Mhm.
yeah, just interesting how it can go either way. We can go into that restrictive, or like, I'm just going to eat whatever because I need comfort when we get to that
I think
space.
for me, up until that point, as I said, I played a lot of sports. I was on a very like a good routine. So it's like you were only eating, you were eating breakfast before you went to school. You were just having normal lunch, and you come home and have dinner with your family. You were on the go so much. There was not really anything else. But then I go into university, and we live in a residence and
Mm,
have a cafeteria, and it's just food all around you. I
yeah.
remember eating a slice of pizza while waiting for a stir fry to get made. No wonder the pounds go on, you know?
Yeah.
But to add to that, when I was in residence, our cafeteria would close at 6:30. So if
Yeah.
you didn't eat until like by then, you didn't eat at all.
Yeah.
So you'd almost like stock up on food, so because you knew you had to
Mm,
study all night long,
yes.
and if you were busy or in a late class, maybe you order pizza,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
it's
I
not a
think,
great environment to be
no.
having healthy habits around food.
No, and one of the girls that I worked with, she was one of my clients. She was actually in the army, and for them, they
Mhm.
have like, you literally have a half an hour window to eat, and that's it. Like,
That's
and
the
if you don't eat,
opposite
you
of intuitive
don't,
eating.
and then you are completely exercising the full day. Like, it's hard labor. It's like mental stamina, everything that's
Mhm.
like really stressful. And she's like, this is why I'm struggling, like I know it's because of this, but like, what do I do? I'm in the army. So like, yeah, it was quite interesting to work with her and work around those kind of things, because you're not allowed,
Mhm.
from an army based perspective, you can't take food out of their food holes either.
No.
So
It's a very
just
like regimented schedule.
very much so. So yeah, if we are ever in a space where like there's like that cafeteria scenario is definitely a form of restriction, because it's like, well, you can't eat after this time. So it is
Mhm.
like, let's get it in there. Yeah.
And we weren't allowed to take anything back. I remember we were only allowed to take maybe one orange back. So messed up
Oh.
now that I think back to it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, no, it is crazy. And like we're talking here about the reality of weight gain when we are going through stressful situations. We are not shaming weight gain at all. Just know that weight gain is there for to support you in some way. And someone actually
Mm.
had, I don't know if it was you, Janelle, that shared with me a little quote about, that fat you have is the life
I
you've
did.
lived. Yeah, it was you. And
Mhm.
that was just such a beautiful reminder of, um, you know, our eating issues and
Mhm.
possible weight gain is there for a reason. It's not the enemy. We can work through it.
Yeah, essentially the quote was, that 5 to 10 pounds you're always trying to lose that you can't lose. Just realize that that 5 to 10 pounds is the cake that you had for your birthday, the drinks that you went out with and celebrated with girlfriends. It's all the moments that make life life is that
Yeah.
5 to 10 extra pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of birthdays,
Mm.
it was your birthday on the weekend. Happy
Oh, it was
birthday.
good. Like I said earlier, lockdown number two birthday, but we made the most of it. And I'm glad I'm in a place now where I don't mind eating the cake or the donuts because
Mm.
the nature of being in a lockdown birthday, I had a lot of friends send me treats because how else are they
Oh.
gonna celebrate with me, you know? So every time I pick up my phone, the concierge would be like, "Oh, you have another package." And I think a few years ago, I would have definitely gotten overwhelmed by like, oh, I can't believe people are sending me this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't
Mm.
eat this. But I took so much comfort in like it's more the thought around it that people want to make you happy. Like you don't have to eat it, you're not expected to. And one thing that I did was I shared it. Like I gave a bunch to the concierge, I gave to friends.
Yeah,
So it's
beautiful.
I didn't have guilt around one not eating it and it going to waste, two eating it all and then feeling guilty about eating it all. So I was definitely very mindful on how the stuff I ate myself, how I shared it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like that, just like we talked about this just before we went on to the recording, and just reminded me of how I used to kind of obsess and just freak out
Mm.
weeks before my birthday. Like, am I going to eat the cake? I want my favorite cake, but I only want to eat one piece, and I'm going to have wine. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to run so much. Like, it took years and years. It like stole so many birthday memories, and
Mm.
even memories of friends' birthday parties. I'd be freaking out about, there's going to be cake. Oh, just craving the cake, but I don't want to eat the cake. And yeah, so it's
No.
beautiful that you in a space where you just like absolutely enjoyed it. And like you said, you were able to share that with others, which is what birthday cake is all about, is like, sharing it
But
as
hey,
well.
I was definitely in a place at one point in my life that I sacrificed a lot of memories because I didn't want to have the dessert, you know?
Mm, yeah, yeah. It's amazing how much time we waste on obsessing about food, isn't it?
So much. I wish I had an app that calculated how much time.
I think so. I think there might be a market for this.
Ugh, I know, I know. Even just
You,
obsessing, I know there was times when I was on certain fad diets, not really fad, but I for many years I was vegan vegetarian and I I do feel better when I eat more plant-based for sure. But I had very strict restrictions around it and I know it brought up a lot of arguments and fights with family where they just wanted to have me over for a meal, but then got stressed because they didn't know what I could eat anymore, you know? I remember having to bring my own stuff to meals. Like it was so many awkward situations and so much stress around it. And for me, a lot of stress leads to weight gain. So then it was all counterintuitive. Like it wasn't
yeah,
working for me, clearly.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think the more we stress about food, the more we eat it, or the more we hold on to it in our bodies. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy. So, did you want to just share a little bit about your personal beliefs about and your personal stories about body acceptance and diets and
Mm.
everything that's going on in
I'm
the world?
very thankful. I remember a really strong memory. I'm an only child and a girl, and I remember growing up. My mom would always give me books for Christmas. And it's funny, I should ask her this, but she always gave me self-help books. Like when I was young, like growing up. And I remember specifically there was this one book called Nobody's Perfect. And I remember that I could pick it out of a bookstore, like, it's so ingrained in my memory, and I guess her style of parenting back then was because she knew I was such a big reader, was let's give her books that are going to allow her to develop a more body acceptance, healthy view on bodies. And now, similar to a lot of girls with moms, I grew up with my mom yo-yo dieting all the time, like all the time. She was always using Weight Watchers, curves. There was always talk around losing weight. And I think that's very impressionable when you're a young girl. You know, I'm sure deep down subconsciously there's stuff there. I remember growing up like having family members comment on my size. Like I went through puberty and was bigger at one point in my life. And I remember it was never like, "Oh, you're doing so great in school," or, "Oh, like
Yeah.
you did this, that." It's always like you either gained weight or you lost weight. I don't
Mm.
know what it is with women, but the first thing people say to us when they see us, especially family members, is whether we gained or lost weight and
Yeah.
how we look.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I know in university going home, like every Christmas, I was so nervous going home where it's like, okay, did I lose or gain weight from the last time people saw me? Because I know that would have been the topic of conversation. It's not going to
Mm.
be around anything I'm achieving. It's
Yeah.
always weight.
It's crazy, isn't it? And like,
Mm.
unfortunately, that kind of, when our family says that, it's kind of like, well,
Oh, it
kind of
hurts
feels like
more.
there's like this level of acceptance that's kind of, or rejection that comes up.
Yeah,
Like, am I going to be rejected this holiday when I go home or not? It's just crazy.
I know.
Yeah, and I think it is something that it starts like, you know, as adults, we don't realize what children sponge up.
I
And
know. Everything. We sponge up everything.
exactly, and that's what our minds are meant to do. So eating disorders and eating issues don't
Mhm.
just start happening in our like late 20s or 30s. It's
No, they're
something
deeply
that's
conditioned.
really conditioned from when we were
Mhm.
like, young. So
I know.
we need to be so careful what we say in front of children, and
Mhm.
like, spread the word of body acceptance. And it's funny how people judge just on appearance, and I used to do the same. If I saw a friend gaining weight or myself gaining weight, it would be, I'm struggling, or she's struggling. Like,
And they might be the
they
happiest they've
might
ever
be
been in
so
their
happy,
life.
right? Like,
I
what,
know.
that is my,
But
like,
we equate gaining
literally.
weight to unhappiness.
Yeah, and if
It's
they've
so messed
lost
up.
weight, it would be, they're doing so well. Like, meanwhile, like,
And a lot of the
some
times
people
it's
look
the
so
opposite.
unhappy, or they've been sick or whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
they're so thin, they're doing so well.
I know.
That is conditioning, like.
Mhm. And those are the messages in our society today.
Yeah, yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. So how did you start, so you talked about like, like growing up in this environment with your mom, always like talking about diets and losing weight, and she's yo-yo dieting and all these different
Mhm.
things. How did that affect, and like you mentioned, she gave you this book,
Mhm.
which I might look up. It sounds really
It was
interesting.
beautiful. Yeah, I think overall when I really look back, the times that I was more impressionable to diet culture and fad diets is when I was feeling insecure about other
Mm,
parts of my life. The times in my life I was feel very secure in parts of my life, or I was just busy with other parts of my life, nothing about food or diet culture could affect me,
yeah.
you know? So I think even when I was growing up, when my mom was yo-yo dieting, I was so busy with school and sports and friends that I don't think it made an impression, but I think during the times I was in university when I was feeling like I had no control over any part of my life and everything was so new and just like a new environment. I think that was when I was more prone to falling into fad diets and working out a lot more. And I remember very clearly one of my first diets, and I don't know where I must have gotten this from Pinterest. I'm sure everyone has felt this way before where they're googling Pinterest of diet or whatever. Anyways, I was on this 4-day diet. Like, what the hell is that going to do? But yeah, it was a 4-day cleanse or whatever. And I'm saying this in a mocking way because I've been there. Like, I know,
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, what did you think this is going to do? And I remember, like, it was one of those diets where breakfast is 2 eggs, a like 2 boiled eggs, and then a snack would be cottage cheese on, like, crackers. And I remember that was the first and last time I had ever bought or ate cottage cheese. And I remember, like, opening up the cottage cheese and, like, putting it on crackers, and I'm like, "I don't
That's
care what size I am, I will never be eating this again. There has to be better ways to lose weight. This is what means losing weight? No." And I was like that I remember this moment very clearly, and I said, "Not a chance." I said, "I don't
mm,
care if I don't lose the weight. I'm not doing it this way.
Yeah.
And but I think back to that time in my life, like I was low. I was to be able to go and buy all the groceries on like a university budget for like a 4-day fad cleanse diet. Yeah, insecurities were high at that point, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. I think I did a similar thing. It was a lemon water cleanse for seven
Oh
days. Oh
god.
my gosh. And also one of the only things I could eat was cottage cheese. I was just like,
Ugh.
and it had to be the chunky version for some reason. And oh my gosh, it was just like,
But when I
ah,
think back to that, I'm like, another diet would tell me never eat dairy, or, you know? So
yeah.
it's I don't know. I am a big believer in, and I hate to use the term intuitive eating, but you have to really just listen to your body. I know I've been my thinnest and healthiest when I stopped obsessing about working out and eating right.
Mm,
And I just let it go.
yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
definitely in a period of that now. And yeah, a lot of my clothes fit bigger on me. And I had pizza the other night. I don't know like, it's another thing we were talking about the last time is calling foods good versus bad. That gotta
Yes.
go. That's
Yeah.
enough of that.
Absolutely. Like that is like something we just really need to like just banish out of.
Mhm.
Um, and like once we actually start taking that, because the minute we do that, we label food with all these, toxic or addictive, bad, good. We
Mhm.
actually start instilling fear in those foods. And yep, what does fear do? Cortisol,
I
um,
know.
cravings, back into cycles of eating the foods that we just call bad. So, and
I
then we,
know when I really think about it, the times I'm eating less calorie dense food and not eating my best is when I'm stressed and when my cortisol levels are high. And yeah, I'm just reaching for anything that's going to emotionally fill that void.
yeah, absolutely. And, that's the thing. Like, emotional eating is never going to go away. Um,
Mm-mm.
it's understanding, like you said, like, now know, oh my gosh, like, I'm really stressed because here I'm acting
Mhm.
out like I'm eating those foods. But because you don't have that restrictive
Mm,
pattern of, oh, well, I'm either on a diet or I'm not, and you kind of do listen more to your body, you're like, yeah, okay, that's acceptable. I am stressed right now, and
mhm.
then you kind of go, okay, how can I support myself?
The thing that makes me really sad, and I'm in a lot of Facebook groups of just like women ages 20 to 30, and there's so many posts that say, "Oh my god, I had a binge. I ate this. Like, what's a diet or what's a workout plan I can do today to make up for it?"
Yeah,
And there's so many comments that say, which are good, that say, first step, let it go.
yeah.
Like, we can't reverse what we've already done. And two, a lot of the times it's like, let's just get some vitamins in you, like in terms of like eating food, but like let's just get
Mm,
some more water in you. Like you're feeling gross because there's a lot of sugar in your body
yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So,
But
and I think,
going for a run is not gonna fix
no,
the reasons, the underlying reasons why you had that quote unquote slip.
yeah. And, to be honest with you, the feeling gross has got very little to do with the physical sensations. It's
Mhm.
very much to do with the
Guilt.
emotional guilt and regrets.
Yeah.
And running, your like going to run to make up for that, it's just
It's further
seen as
adding
then
cortisol.
punishing yourself
Mm,
even more, just like almost flogging
you know.
yourself for being on that and I know because I used to go run
You
100
used to do it all the
kilometers
time.
a
We've all been
week.
there.
Yeah, so oh my gosh, I love talking about this. So let's just talk about how did you build this resilience in your body acceptance and just, kind of in this environment where everything is so influential. How did you kind of say, okay, I'm not getting sucked into that?
Mhm. First thing that I did that I think is a real tactical tip is stop following people on social media that are a different size than you. Because if I'm a size 6 for people who can't tell because I'm sitting down. If I'm following a bunch of women and fashion influencers on Instagram that are size 0 and 2, and then expect myself to look the same as them in that cute top, it's only going to set myself up for failure. So if I start following girls that have a similar look as me, or just like are the same size, if I wear that clothes that they're promoting, I can assume that that's what it's going to look like to me, on
Mm.
me, And I know there's a big movement on like stop following people that look like you, but for me, I had to do that because I was getting really warped into never feeling good enough, where
Yeah.
I'd be following people, these brunettes with long, luscious, wavy hair. My hair will never look like that. I have blonde, thin hair, straight hair. So I started following girls that were size 6, similar complexion, similar like hairstyle, and it's like, oh, I see how they're styling themselves. I see, and that way you surround yourself a lot more with the body type that you are, so you're not sucked into trying to make your body look different than it naturally looks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the test here is if you feel at all that a picture or a profile makes you feel bad about yourself,
Unfollow.
unfollow. It doesn't matter what size they are. Maybe it's just their message that they're putting out
Yeah,
there.
unfollow. I love an unfollow button. I unfollow everyone. It feels really good. It's like, that feeling when you're decluttering and you're just like
Yeah,
throwing things out or donating.
yes.
Just start unfollowing people. It'll feel the same.
There we go.
Everyone
There we
should
go.
spring clean everything, even your
Yeah,
social media.
exactly. Yeah, definitely.
But that's
Beautiful.
that's the first tactical thing I did.
Mhm.
And honestly, the other tactical thing that really works for me is busy your mind with other things. And I know when disordered eating is so deeply rooted, it's hard. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to disconnect yourself from it because it has such a control factor to it. But if you fill your brain and your schedule with so many other things that make you happy, you start seeing food as just a way to live, that you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, right, I'm actually exhausted. I should probably eat now." You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because, like, that's the thing.
Because
We
I used to
focus so
obsess
much
about it.
on the things we don't want, the dieting and everything, and that's how it like sucks you in. And like that's all you can think about. That's all you see. You're constantly reminded of it. That's the only activities you do, even your exercises, because you want to lose weight. Whereas, like, that's a beautiful way of looking at it, is really just fill your day with things that really inspire you and uplift you.
Mhm.
And yeah, amazing.
And I'm a big believer that, and this is only a new thing that I'm a big believer in that I'm still working on, is beauty is really within. Like if you can get any kind of work done, you can be your thinnest, you could be using all the perfect makeup, but if you don't feel beautiful inside, that's
Mm,
not going to shine through. You
yeah,
know? People can see
absolutely.
it. Like it's the glow, it's your eyes, it's
Mm,
if you actually like who you are and you genuinely feel beautiful and love your life, that's going to exude out so much.
yeah, beautiful. Well, Janelle, I could chat to you all day. I just love
You know.
our conversations. But for sake of time, I think I just wanted to thank you for coming onto the podcast. And one last question from me is, can you share one way in which you like to appreciate your body?
Hmm. Wow, what a great question. One way that I love to appreciate my body. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier is wear the type of clothes that suits you,
Mm.
because then you'll always feel like you look your best.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you and the Ebb and Glow podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So personal, if you want to connect with me personally, my Instagram is at Jenelle_Tremblett. I share just pretty much my personal life plus real estate. If you ever want to see some views of Toronto, you'll find them in my Instagram stories. And then podcast, you can find the Ebb and Glow podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts, mainly Spotify and Apple Podcast, and the Instagram handle Ebb and Glow podcast as well.
Beautiful. Awesome. I will put all those links in the show notes. Thank you, Janelle, for joining me today. If anyone is listening, please go and follow Jenelle and her journey and just her amazing like gift of just opening and being real with real life stuff, and just opening that up so that people know that that's not, it's okay, life is life. And it's just amazing what she does in her podcast. So thank you,
Yes, and
Jenelle, for
thank you
joining
so
me.
much. I think the work that you're doing is beautiful. I've listened to so many of your episodes, and
Oh,
I
thank
think a
you.
lot of women and even men could gain a lot of value from the inspiration and the stories that you share on your podcast. So I'm so
Oh.
excited for what you're going to keep doing.
Thank you so much, my love. So, thank you everyone for listening in or watching on YouTube. This is Beyond Overeating Podcast. If you want to like and subscribe, come and follow us. Come and download some freebies on this episode show notes, and we will see you next week for the next episode of the Beyond Overeating Podcast. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and don't forget to share this with all your friends. You can do this by adding this to your Instagram story and tagging me at Wholesome Lifestyle Project, or by simply telling them about it. If you could rate and review on whatever platform you are listening, this will go a long way in helping me get this podcast out there so that I can share my message and help as many women out there struggling with food issues as I can. Don't forget, you can follow me on Instagram on Wholesome Lifestyle Project, or connect with me on LinkedIn. My name's Stel Coombe-Heath, and that's where you'll find me on LinkedIn. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.